Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bhavya Kumar. I'm a managing director and partner at BCG, and I'm thrilled to be moderating a panel discussion today with this esteemed set of panelists here. And the topic I think that was introduced to us, we'll be discussing, transforming core banking, leveraging AI and cloud. It's a big topic, and I think a very relevant topic right now, because from the work that we see globally, a lot of banks are going through this journey right now, and it's an inflection point where banks are thinking about how do they balance the core transformation while still maintaining their legacy operations and also adopting the agility that is required to win in the market. And just to put in perspective, banks globally have spent more than $100 billion on core modernization and cloud transformation just in 2024. Now, the key question that is on mind of all leaders is how do I actually get ROI from these investments? And more importantly, how do I make sure I'm balancing the speed of modernization with the stability that is required to run any banking operation? So this is what we're going to uncover today with a esteemed set of panelists. And what is good is the panelists are from different domains that cover the entire ecosystem of the banking sector. We have people who are thought leaders in the banking domain itself, plus from the fintech innovation side, plus also the platform side, because they are all working together to modernize this. So with that, if I start the discussion, maybe I start with Ashwini, you first. You are, one of the, you represent one of the largest banks in India, and you are obviously on a journey of modernization. Would love to hear from your perspective, how do you actually see the core modernization running in your bank? At the same time, you're also balancing the core operations that SBI has. So it'll be good to hear your journey so far.
Oh, thank you, Bhavya, and very happy to be here. Gives me a kind of a hangar feeling, sitting in a hangar. And since we're sitting backstage in some bit of dark, coming to light. But coming to the more serious topic of core banking, before I get into that topic, let me lay out the challenge for a bank like us, which is largest in India. But the largeness has to be understood. So we have 23,000 branches. But every day we handle almost 650 to 660 million transactions. And the per second transaction count is 19,000 to 20,000. And this is when we have a runway of handling up to 35,000. But the rate at which our basic payment product, which is UPI, is scaling and increasing almost 15-20% every year, we have seen the transaction load increase significantly. So when we looked at core banking modernization about 3-4 years back, the idea then was that, well, the main base, which is for Unix for us, and the hardware, it's all getting legacy. It needs to be upgraded, needs to be modernized. And suddenly from 2020 onwards, post-COVID, this UPI transactions, digital transactions increased humongously. And we were faced with a situation where all of these transactions were hitting the core and creating a lot of queues and difficulties. And we had technical declines of up to 3.5%. The regulator was not happy. The public was not happy. So we did a lot of things. We started working on core modernization in a real earnest by that time. And as you rightly observed, for us, core modernization needs to necessarily account for the fact that we are running a ship. And we have to modernize it as we run it. There cannot be any stoppage or any faults in between. So to do that, we worked on 4 axes. We are not going in for a complete shift straight away to a cloud or to a lift and shift approach, because that is too disruptive. What we thought about is that we will modernize the hardware on one side, so which we are in the process of doing. Next 2 years, we have done part of it, but next 2 years we'll complete it. We also want to shift the operating system from a Unix-based to Linux. We are midway in that shift. And we are also hollowing the core through first taking out many systems, what is called core externalizations. So for example, the vendor payment system, the government payment systems, the reports, all of them have been taken out in different systems from the core. We've taken out inquiry services as a microservice from the core, and many other microservices are on the way. And we are also we have taken out much of accounting from each transaction by transaction to a console basis. So all of this has helped us handle these digital transactions seamlessly, and our decline rates are now 0.3%, the best in the industry. But we know that this is not enough. How do we use cloud? Now, cloud while the regulator has permitted, but there are challenges of data security, there are challenges of getting logged into a public cloud. So we have built our private cloud, which we hope will scale it up, and ultimately someday, maybe our core will partly reside on that. So that's the broad idea. In the next 2 years, we hope to complete the process of hollowisation, microservices, modernization, externalization, all of that. And then the only thing left will be the AI piece. We have started with that as well. That we are doing that in the ticketing for whatever the issues the branches face. And the AI is now helping us to actually give a quicker response, learn on the job, and also pick up through OCR, etc., so that a quick response goes and tickets are auto-closed many times. So this is the early start, but I think it's a long journey, and we have to first make sure systems are always on, always available to customers 24/7. So that's our journey so far.
Thanks, Ashwini. I think this is a very interesting perspective. Maybe I bring Luis to you into the discussion. I think core transformation is not just a technology program, but it is more often than not a value realization program. Yeah. How do you see the right approach to actually build a core banking, transformation so that you take value realization from day one? Yeah.
It's quite a timely question for me because I'm actually quite new in my role. So although I've had a few wrestling matches with core banking systems in the past, I now face that exact challenge, and I guess I'm drawing on some of those experiences in the comments that I make. So I think there's a need to sort of try and change the conversation. I think that most banks have been through enough cycles of core banking upgrades that it's like this fairly sort of tired long-term relationship that they've got into where they kind of feel a bit trapped. It sort of feels like it's going to be a long and extended separation with high maintenance costs, and it's hard to get people's energy rallied around that. You'll never get away from that fully because, that's the reality of the situation. But I don't think that is sort of mutually exclusive with also aligning that with some fairly sort of ambitious business goals, which where you actually want to orchestrate outcomes across the platform, because that helps to sort of drive the investment focus and the way that you go about eliminating tech debt to optimize towards those outcomes. So you'll have to do some horizontal investment, but you can also drive that end-to-end investment. And that will also help you to start to unbundle and decouple and modernize the architecture in order to achieve those outcomes. So, an example of one of those scary goals from a previous life was the idea that you should be able to deliver an investment proposal to a client. That investment proposal should be personalized. It should be aligned with the house view. It should be portfolio enhancing. They should be able to click to trade it. It should auto book, and it should come with a full set of compliant post-trade disclosures. And it should be able to be done without the intervention on an RM and run on any booking platform. So that goal provided an enormous amount of clarity to drive the direction of modernization work across the platform and start to break out the services that would enable that sort of outcome and modernize those things. So it takes you towards this sort of concept of an orchestration architecture and a set of services that over time you start to pull out of the platform by wrapping it in APIs so that you then create some abstraction and decoupling so that you can renovate and rebuild those components. I guess the second part of your question, which is, in my view, the even harder bit, is about the culture change. And I think here you get into sort of moving towards sort of more agile and sort of end-to-end business and tech governance, which is something a lot of banks struggle with because people like certainty and plans make people feel comfortable even if they don't always materialize. And I think it comes down to really embracing that uncertainty and building product management and engineering capabilities that allow you to manage that uncertainty and to respond to that change, and then changing the way that you budget and you measure success so that it's more aligned with that outcome-orientated way of delivering.
Yeah. No, thanks, Luis. I think this is very appropriate, right? This governance piece often is one of the key pieces in the puzzle that you need to optimize to be able to get these programs going, and more importantly, also deliver the right outcomes. Yeah. I think the next big thing that we see is, how is AI being leveraged in these core modernization programs, and that's where Ken, I would like to bring you, because of course Tencent is at the forefront of running some of these programs leveraging AI. How, from your experience, can you share some examples of how banks are embedding AI into their digital cores? Yeah.
Thank you. So first of all, Tencent, as a 100,000 people organization, we do have multiple businesses ranging from gaming to our communication platform, which is WeChat, and also our payment platform, which is WeChat Pay, as well as other services that are primarily in the consumer space, but they are closely tied to the payment platform. So if you think about the problems that we have to solve, we're really dealing with hundreds of millions of concurrent users, or in the case of WeChat, more than 1.3 billion monthly users on this platform. They're doing transactions every day. And so from an engineering standpoint, we constantly have to think about how do we optimize some of these engineering experiences so that we're able to solve some of these problems at scale. So for example, ticketing issues. Imagine having hundreds of millions of customers raising tickets on a communication platform to try to solve their problems. How do you then ensure that you're able to solve them in a timely fashion? So that's where we're seeing a few trends across the industry, and of course, we as a company are constantly thinking about how do we innovate in that space. One area will be in the agentic AI space. You guys would have heard of agentic AI, I'm sure. But it's really, at the end of the day, taking generative AI to the next level, whereby a lot of the tasks are automated. There are minimal to no human interventions. The AI model that we have trained or will be training are able to reason within itself and to be able to answer and provide most of the questions or most of the solutions that we're able to pre-train back to the customer in order to solve a particular use case. So the ATP, which is a solution that we're rolling out, the Agentic Development Platform, it actually comprises of pre-trained workflows that we are solving within a particular use case. So for example, the use case could be, how can I better automate my marketing operations? How can I better automate my ticketing resolution? How can I better automate the ability for me to generate a set of codes for a trading platform patching? How can I better automate my marketing related data set so that I can drive better strategy without me having to spend a ton of time trying to analyze the data? So again, we are investing heavily in this space. The Agentic Development Platform is something that we've announced this week, and we're very keen to partner with the local industry players in this region to continue to take this forward. Now, of course, alongside with the whole evolution of AI, which, by the way, is still very much at its infancy, where a lot of companies are still trying to really figure out what will be the next wave of the AI revolution will look like, would be the ability to harness more data sets than what pre-trained models in the industry could provide. So for example, in Tencent, we have been able to innovate by using a technology called Retrieval Augmented Generation Platform, whereby you're able to combine data sets within the organization. You're able to take data from the large language model like ChatGPT, DeepSeek, and many other LLMs out there, and to look at taking all these data sets and better train the generative AI platform that I talked about just now. Now that's one key area that we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of banks, financial institutions really wanting to solve a lot of the mundane administrative tasks to look at how this agentic AI can help them in this journey. but closer to reality, because the agentic AI is very much at its infancy. But in terms of what's been sort of deployed, and also what's been a little bit more mature will be in the areas of KYC, so electronic know your customer. We've been working with many banks to look at eKYC to drive better onboarding of customers, and also ensuring that we're reducing fraudulent behaviors. We also looked at the capabilities of optical character recognition, again, to look at how can we drive sort of money laundering type behaviors or fraudulent behaviors by using imaging capabilities to ensure that there is a high degree of integrity in the whole process. Other examples would be in the areas of digital humans. So digital humans, again, is a new area, but we're seeing quite a wide range of adoption across various parts of the banking and financial sector. For example, leveraging digital human to drive telebanking. Because if you think about the landscape in certain parts of Asia or in China, there are many folks that are unbanked. They don't have access to the regular retail bank down the street. So how do you ensure that they have good banking experience by leveraging the power of the internet, but yet enjoying the immersive experience of talking to a banker? So that's where the power of digital human comes in, whereby we're able to train some of these models to provide sort of a real-life banking experience. Closer to home, we have been working with companies like Changi Airport. It's not a bank, but we've actually piloted this, and it was featured on CNN, so I'm very proud to talk about it, which is we actually piloted the digital human to replace customer service, which historically or traditionally has been powered by a human, but the next generation of customer service could very well be powered by a digital human trained by large language model, powered by generative AI.
No.
Some examples, yeah.
I think that was a very good, introduction, and also some flagship examples of use cases that AI is powering. And maybe we look at it from the fintech angle now, Sabyasachi, because Perfios obviously is at the forefront of driving some of these, AI-led programs. How are you leveraging advanced AI in terms of not only just plain automation, but also re-architecting end-to-end processes for institutions?
Sure. Thanks, Bhavya. I think the first thing that we see in the industry that we operate, which is banking and financial services, what matters is context. And for me, what we have discovered, the generic LLMs do not work. There are a couple of reasons. I'll not delve into that, but what we did uniquely at Perfios, we were the industry first to create an MCP for banking as a service. Now, what it does is it creates an orchestration between the internal agents and an external agents, which is work in progress because both the financial institutions and Perfios has to be ready. While we are ready, we are also guiding some of the banks, progressive ones, to build that stack where both internal and external orchestration can happen very, very seamlessly. Otherwise, you will not do core transformation. You will do some basic, as people say, a marketing transformation or some OCR or improvements in the back office transformation. But the core transformation will only happen when actually agents' workflow orchestration happens and it can talk to external world and internal world seamlessly. So that's what we are doing, and as we are doing, we have taken a bold step to also help and enable the banks. Yeah. So that's one. Second, I think what we are doing, the agent-driven workflow, that is what we are creating. What does that mean? We are creating very deep, specific agents solving one specific use case like that. So one, let's say, how do you estimate an income? Okay, one agent only doing that and going deep. Similarly, how do you do fraud? So on fraud control, only one agent working deep on that. Similarly, the third one, let's say we are picking up, what do you do to ensure that your very, very singular-driven task like KYC, or we call it KYB as well for business, for entities, or for consumers, how do you go deep in that? So these agents are being created, but also we are creating workflows to these agents to talk together. So I think this is one of the second biggest transformation that we are doing. And followed by what we have done a lot of work on the loan origination system, which we know more commonly as LOS. So given that we have done some work on that space, we are seeing how those can be completely reimagined. In the sense, do you really need 20 steps or 30 steps to happen when agents can actually solve in 2 or 3 steps?
Absolutely.
While this is complete reimagination, what we are trying to do is, let's say a very hands-on guy can talk to the system and narrate 4 sentences in terms of how the flow should be, the workflow should be. The agents will create that on the fly, and it will be rendered immediately. So that's something that we have created. Probably it is getting tested in some of the banks. Very soon it will be in production with a couple of banks as well.
Yeah.
So I'll stop there.
No, thanks, Abhisaji. I think this is very insightful to hear, right, that how you're creating workflows across agents, because I think that is going to be key as we drive the transformation end-to-end going forward. Of course, transformation is nice, but of course you need to have the right architecture. And I think, Luis, you mentioned this orchestration, layer that you need to put in this architecture. And if you think about cloud, of course, cloud is also redefining how we look at the overall architecture for banks. From your perspective, what is the right approach that banks should take as they are thinking about this cloud transformation and adoption, on-prem versus hybrid? So if you can share some thoughts on that, that'll be very good, insightful.
Yeah, I think I'll probably start with what not to do. I think cloud migration is a bit of a misnomer because it sort of takes you down this lift and shift path, which most people have found ends with a feeling of deep regret, versus an approach where you're thinking much more about, how do I decompose, how do I re-engineer, how do I reimagine my architecture on the cloud. I think for most big complicated banks, outside in is probably more realistic in terms of a migration approach. But ideally with an outside in sort of mindset in terms of being as agnostic to the bank as you can be as you start to move things out. So it will generally start with channels and APIs, but what should follow is domain-based microservices and orchestration that starts to allow you to, to pull your sort of core systems outside the bank. Personally, still haven't quite got the conviction around cloud-native core because I'm not sure for a very large, sophisticated bank that all the jigsaw pieces exist yet. I hope to be convinced at some stage, but when you look at the product breadth and when you look at to what extent things are genuinely composable and cloud native, you tend to bump up against limitations. And it would be quite unfortunate to go from a feeling of being trapped in one big monolithic system to feeling like you're trapped in another product or set of products. They just happen to be on cloud this time. In terms of that sort of approach inevitably takes you into a world of coexistence. And so if I was to sort of contrast that with the previous relationship, this one needs to be a very modern and open relationship where you've sort of got this on-prem sort of partner who's the rock of the relationship, the reliable one who's taking care of the house and all the most important things in terms of the ledger, payments, the important data, the reporting. And then the more adventurous one is out there on cloud, the channels, the APIs, the products, the user experience, the orchestration. And so these are two quite different partners. And so, relationships like that are only going to work if there's very clear boundaries that you set, if there's implicit trust or zero trust, as I guess we would call it in technology, and if there's very regular communication. And probably above all, very clear transparency and an extremely clear understanding of what you're going to do when things go wrong.
Yeah. I think, Ken, you said that, you're yet to see a cloud-native core that kind of covers the depth and breadth. Maybe Ken, here I want to get your thoughts because, you are at the forefront of this. What are you seeing from banks, as you're implementing these, cloud-based core systems? What are some of the barriers that they should be considering as they're thinking about these journeys?
Yeah. So I very much resonate with what Luis has mentioned, because we've dealt with many banking customers, and one thing that resonates quite often would be none of the public cloud providers has got all the jigsaw in place to meet where they want to be at this point in their journey to the cloud. So I think we've always taken a very pragmatic approach, whereby we recognize that not all banking customers are ready for full public cloud adoption. And that's where our hybrid cloud solutions and our private cloud solution, as well as our software deployment capabilities, comes into play. And that goes back to what Luis has mentioned, because there are certain services that are not quite ready for public cloud, but unique components of a public cloud characteristic, and to ensure that you can take components of that to plug into the existing sort of infrastructure. And again, I think it's a multi-year and multi-pronged approach, whereby companies, banking customers, instead of lifting and shifting, as they go through this whole re-engineering effort, they would need different pieces of the technology puzzles to come together in a total solution. Where we differentiate ourselves in Tencent is that many of our offerings are based on the foundation of our public cloud. And again, our public cloud are already serving billions of concurrent users on this planet. So if you think about WeChat, it's got 1.3 billion monthly FD user, is a critical information infrastructure in China. So it's CII, very regulated. So the underlying infrastructure has got to support that. So then the question is, how do I take components of that and apply it in a banking customer that wants to have that same stability, scalability, and the same set of security standards, but not quite ready for a full public cloud adoption because of regulatory and legacy reasons. And that's where, again, we take components of that to think about how do we then fit into what a traditional bank will look like. Yeah. And again, the approach that we're taking is an extremely pragmatic one. When we deal with a digital native bank, a digital bank, that has got no legacy. WeBank, for example, it's got 400 million subscribers. It's built everything from ground up, from ground zero, and that's where a lot of our solution can go in, lock, stock, barrel. But whereas a very traditional bank like ICBC or Bank of China, they would again be very much like what Luis has mentioned. We take components of that and try to ensure that we meet them at the journey or the readiness that they are able to adopt. And ultimately, I think. We are also very cognizant of the regulatory requirements across all the countries that we operate in. So the regulators in Singapore versus Malaysia versus Philippines or the rest of Southeast Asia and across the broader region would differ country by country, and therefore having a close partnership together with our customers is absolutely critical when it comes to what type of solution, what type of cloud adoption, what kind of toolkits are pragmatic enough for them to solve the problem.
Yeah. No, I think you summed it up nicely, because this whole components-based approach, I think, and being very tailored to a situation is super important. And I think that's what will make these transformations successful as we go along. Yeah.
And maybe just one last point. Yes. I think it's important when banking customers think about the right vendors to work with. I think the key question is also, will I set myself up for vendor locked in?
Yeah.
I think Luis mentioned this. And that's where, again, Tencent, because we are very much supporting the open source community, we welcome the contribution and the contribution from the open source community to ensure that our software can run on any third-party hardware, for example. Right? And that, again, I think that's important.
It's very important. I think you mentioned on this collaboration in the community, right, the ecosystem. Maybe the last theme that I also want to touch upon is we are seeing a lot of collaboration happening, between banks, between fintechs, and also the big techs. Yeah. So maybe Ashwini, you want to comment on how does SBI look at some of these partnerships, in terms of co-creating offerings, or where are we using them in your end-to-end banking value chain?
Yeah, so fintechs, this whole thing started about 5-7 years back when it was said that fintechs would eat our lunch and dinner and take over from banks. And it hasn't happened that way. And we today now have a collaboration approach, which is the right approach. And what we do in our bank, so our standpoint for a fintech solution is we recognize the agility, the convenience, the intuitiveness, the interface. All of that is where fintechs are much better than legacy tech providers. But at the same time, we need to make sure that they are able to deliver to the scale at which we operate. Secondly, they have the security, which is either cyber or other security, which is up to where the banking solution should be. And the compliance requirements are fully met. So with those standpoints, when we onboard fintechs, we look at all this. So what we have done is we have created a sandbox approach, and we have opened almost, we have created an innovation hub. Almost 300 APIs have been exposed. Fintechs can come, and we have given a UAT of our core banking itself. So fintechs can come and test their solutions and see that whether they must. We guide them also, and subsequently we open the whole offer through a request for information, request for proposal approach. They can do pilots, and finally we onboard them. So Sabyasachi's firm is onboarded, and they're fully integrated in our process as well. And we're using them in multiple ways. So to give you some examples, statement analysis of account statement analysis is one use case. Video KYC is another use case. We use a fintech solution. And similarly, there are others in trade finance where we are going to use agentic AIs now through a fintech to actually scrutinize the documents of guarantees, letters of credit, etc., and help not only the bank people, but also the customer end. So customers can themselves generate a form if they have basic information. So those are some use cases, but suffice to say that agentic AI is the next big thing. I agree with what Ken said, that instead of going for a general GPT approach, pre-training is not going to help us, systems like us, when we have so much information spread across systems, across fragmented systems and structured, unstructured. So agentic is going to be more useful, and which is where we are progressing towards. It's a good relationship, and it has really helped us and hopefully help the fintechs as well.
Thanks. I think maybe Sabyasachi, to build on what Ashwini was saying, of course you are also interfacing with a lot of these banks. How easy or difficult it is, because their architectures are in different, they work at a different pace. How do you actually merge these two things together?
So we have learned it hard way. It's quite complex. A bank like SBI, which has millions and millions of transactions happening on a daily basis, you operate at a different scale. And unless your systems can support that scale, it can't. And I remember when we got onboarded, the compliance checklist has 38 pointers. You need to clear all of those to even get onboarded. So it's not easy, but you learn it. And that helped us. In fact, when we went globally, the amount of scale that we just handled for SBI, we can handle any bank globally. So it helps. Now, how we handle this is in multiple ways, but one of the ways that I like personally is we just don't provide applications. What we provide is an operating system, which basically what it does is it abstracts the underlying complexity that a BFSI ecosystem has. What we have done is we have created typically 4 pillars or layers: connectivity layer, trust layer, intelligence layer, and collection layer. So we don't do point-to-point integration. We have created a unified gateway of sorts, which addresses, if you take the connectivity layer, then all the requirement of a bank related to a due diligence or a KYC or a KYB or any kind of validations and verifications is taken care, so you don't have to integrate point by point. Similarly, if you take a trust layer, anything to do with anti-money laundering, fraud, enterprise risk management, everything is taken care. So you don't have to go and touch all systems or a different use case. So let's say one function in a bank requires a fraud solution. Now, he doesn't have to integrate or ask for it. And similarly, other function requires, he doesn't have to integrate separately. A unified gateway does all that orchestration. So that's what we call it, 4-layer or 4-pillar orchestration called the operating system, which is connectivity, trust, intelligence, and collections. It takes care of more or so the entire ecosystem. That's how we have started.
No, very interesting. And I'm seeing the time. I think we are running out. But look, it has been a very interesting and insightful discussion. I think the key takeaway for me personally is, the core transformations, they are long journeys. And of course, AI, cloud, they can help accelerate some of this. But the key question here is how can we really, modernize these systems at the same time, not losing track of our core stability, plus have this look at the ROI angle, because that's where these use cases, how quickly you can deploy, show early benefit, and that will help you, really fast track these transformations. So many thanks to the panelists to share these insights with us, and thanks for the audience as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.